Happy Monday to you. And for the third time this season, we get together on a Monday, having fresh off of a weekend where we saw the Toronto Blue Jays win Friday, win Saturday, win Sunday. Third time this season, the Toronto Blue Jays have swept a weekend series. Overall, it was the fourth sweep of the season for the Toronto Blue Jays. And what is it with Fridays, right? Remember, they had that 6-2 loss to Baltimore. Speaking of weekend sweeps, that was a bad weekend, right? But that was the only Friday game. Blue Jays are like 7-1 on Fridays this season. So when it's TGIF, the Blue Jays are really paying attention and playing good ball. Now, today on Locked On Blue Jays, in the first segment, we'll set the stage for this 4-game series as the really good Houston Astros are in town. Second segment, let's take a look at Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And in the final segment, let's deep dive tonight's pitching matchup, as hopefully this is a happy Alek Manoah day to those of you who still celebrate.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays, thanking you for choosing to spend part of your day talking Toronto Blue Jay baseball with me. Want to shout out some new YouTube subscribers on the Locked On Blue Jays YouTube page. Brendan Hassock, Keith Duncan, his coach Keith, Zem Fun Times, Anthony Licio. Thank you for hitting that subscribe and welcome. Everydayers making the Locked On Blue Jay podcast your first podcast listen each and every day. I certainly see you, and I thank you for that. Of course, the Locked On Blue Jay podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. That's your team every day. Blue Jays fresh off of their fourth series sweep of the season. Again, killing it on these Fridays. Now, the first half of the 2023 schedule continues to be an absolute beast for the Blue Jays as the Houston Astros are in town for 4 games. Now, this is the final week of this incredible stretch. Everydayers will know we've deep dived the intricacies of the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays schedule a lot, and the first half is what they refer to as a bear. Does it get easier in the second half? Oh my. Oh, it's like night and day. It's like night and day. There's 70 games after the All-Star break. 41 will be at home. They're playing teams they didn't get to play last season, like the Marlins, like the Washington Nationals, like the Colorado Rockies. They've still got their games left with the Oakland A's. Like, there is still some absolute W's coming for a rash of W's coming for your Toronto Blue Jays. So I love that they've been able to maintain, right? The American League East hasn't, and we knew that would be the case, right? The American League East hasn't sat around and waited for the Toronto Blue Jays schedule to even out, of course. Not at all, right? Not even close to the case. But Blue Jays have at the very least, maintained that they're in this race. They haven't gotten blown up. They haven't gotten put so far in the rear view just thanks to this very difficult schedule early on. So big picture-wise, there are definitely things we need the Toronto Blue Jays to shore up on. But big picture-wise, when you consider the schedule, pretty pleased with where the Toronto Blue Jays are right now. Now, again, this is the final week of 30 games in 31 days. You talk about a tough schedule. Usually over 31 days, you have at least 3, probably a fourth day off in there over a 31-day span for sure. At least 3, probably a fourth. Blue Jays right now in the midst again of 1 day off in 31 games. Ooh boy, in 31 days. I mean, my goodness, wow. Now, these two teams, you'll probably remember, they were together for a series back in April. Now, take your mind's eye back. It was around mid to late April. At the time, the Blue Jays were hot and the Astros were scuffling. But in that series, I remember that series well. In the whole series, I remember feeling like the Blue Jays were lethargic. There was no spark there at all. Houston took 2 out of 3 from the Blue Jays in that series. The only spirited performance by a Toronto Blue Jay in that series was Chris Bassitt. And it sort of, I guess, remains to be seen if we'll see him in this super dad, right? So I guess it sort of remains to be seen if we'll see him in this series. I certainly hope if everything's going to be okay with his wife and his 2 kids now that he can, because I mean, how good has Chris Bassitt been, right? How good has the Hound on the mound been? He was the only good thing. Well, you know what? Santiago Espinal had a pretty good series as well. So, but really, those are the only good things you could point to. Really, there was no life, if you remember, for the Blue Jays in that Houston series. And again, the Jays were the team that was hot at that time. The Astros were the team that was scuffling. Since that series, since the Blue Jays came into Houston hot and the Astros scuffling, Blue Jays 23-21 since then. 2 measly games over 500 since then. So I can't be happy there. Astros 28-15 since then. I'm going to say that again. 28-15. Did they find the cure for what ails them when the Blue Jays came to town? Because again, that was a scuffling team. Not only 28-15, eye pop emoji record since that series for the Astros, but let's not forget as well, they've got Jose Altuve back. Altuve was not part of that series, right? He was still out injured. So, wow, all kinds of reasons to be concerned. It's extremely possible that the Houston Astros are the best team in the American League. I think it's Tampa Bay. It's extremely possible that it's the Houston Astros. They're incredibly darn good. Now, one thing that is really odd about this 4-game series with the Blue Jays is, as hot as the Astros are, they have had some injuries to some pitchers and some starting pitchers. Thus, all 4 starters in this series will be new to the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays. None of the pitchers that will start in this series for Houston started in that series for Houston against Toronto back in that mid-April series. And that includes Framber Valdez. Oh boy, Framber Valdez. If I remember that series correctly, I think that it was a weekend series, or no, it was an early week series. Sorry, when the Blue Jays went to Houston, and Valdez had pitched on that Sunday night, so the Jays avoided him. But Framber Valdez, we saw Shane McClanahan, an incredible lefty from Tampa Bay, against the Jays the other day. Well, Framber Valdez. Hard to say if he's as good as Shane McClanahan. Probably, I mean, who is, right? Who really is? But Framber Valdez is absolutely awesome, and the Blue Jays will see him on Thursday in the finale of this series. Traditionally, these two, between these two franchises, they've played 11 season series. The Toronto Blue Jays have won just 2 of those season series. Now, the good news is the second one was last season, 2022. If you take your mind's eye back to Jays Houston last season, Jays took 2 out of 3 at Houston, then 2 out of 3 in Toronto. All 4 Blue Jays wins were by 1 run. They were all crazy, exciting games. The last time the Jays had a 1-run win against Houston was back in 2017. Well, last season, they were all 1-run games, all tight, exciting games against Houston. If you're a fan like me, too exciting, right? I like the 7-2 victories, but okay. How did let's take a look at how the Toronto Blue Jays did in that series versus Houston. So how did the Blue Jay batters fare versus Astros pitching? George Springer. Wow. George Springer went 0 for 11 in that series against his former team. Holy moly. Holy moly. Now, at the time, George Springer, that put his average down to 219. He's up to 257 right now. So the Houston Astros know how good George Springer is, and they know they're about to see a different animal this series than what they saw back in April. Same with Bo Bichette, I would say, actually. Bo just 2 for 10. Bo never does well at Houston, never hits well at Houston, never does well against Houston. So hopefully Bo can turn it around in this series here. Vladdy, oh my. Vladdy was just 1 for 12 in that Houston series. The one hit was a home run, but 1 for 12. And again, we're going to look at Vladdy more closely in the next segment. Matt Chapman. Now, this was mid-April. So remember now, Chapman's hitting over 400 in mid-April. He's Paul Molitor in mid-April. All of a sudden, he's become Raimel Tapia. But my goodness, he was a 3 for 11 with 2 home runs in that particular series. Chapman was the player of the month for April. Now, hitting under 200 since, if you can believe it. Yeah, hitting under 200 since. My goodness. He hit a home run June 1st, but went just 2 for 13 in the series that we just saw in New York as well. So it's not exactly like Matt Chapman comes into this series turning things around or looking hot or anything. It was June 1st and he hit the home run. So I know all of us thought, okay, good. May Matt Chapman is gone, but May Matt Chapman seems to still be here. Dalton Varsho against the Astros in that series, just 1 for 8. Brandon Belt just 1 for 6. And what's amazing, this was back. Belt was hitting 154 at the time of this series. He's now up to 259. Let's go, Brandon Belt. Whit Merrifield was off game 1 of that series. He went 2-hit Whit, had 2 for 4 in game 2, 2-hit Whit, 2 for 3 in game 3. In fact, when 2-hit Whit's his nickname, and when in games like yesterday, actually on Sunday, when Whit Merrifield has gotten exactly 2 hits, Blue Jays are 11-0 this season. 2-hit Whit, let's go. Kirk and Kiermaier, each just 1 for 5 in that series. You see, right, this Houston team, even though it's a whole new set of pitchers they're facing, remember, a lot of this work was done by the stellar Astros bullpen, of course. Biggio 0 for 4. And what's a shame is Espinal. Espinal was 2 for 4 in this series. He had a home run. The Blue Jays only scored 7 runs that whole series. Remember I said they were very lethargic that series. The Blue Jays only scored 7 runs the whole darn series, and Espinal scored 2 of them. It was actually the rare series where he played well this season. And I actually see a few pitching matchup spots where I really think that John Schneider and the Blue Jays wish that Espinal was available coming up in this series. I'll take it back to that game 2 of that series again. That's the Chris Bassett gem. Top of the 5th inning, Brandon Belt walk, Whit Merrifield single, then Espy with an RBI single, and Bo with an opposite field single. Now that's 2 hits with runners in scoring position. Those are the only 2 hits the Jays had, right? So this yet again we see the issue of runners in scoring position for the Toronto Blue Jays. They went just 2 for 15 in that series. Whether the Astros were scuffling or not, you can't go 2 for 15 and win 2 out of 3. Certainly not on the road. Coming up on Locked On Blue Jays, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, we'll deep dive some things related to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And on our last segment, we'll deep dive tonight's Astros Blue Jays matchup. Of course, you can catch that on SiriusXM. Now, for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. Well, it's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay's guaranteed fit, you can make sure every part fits right the first time around. You just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check mark to know that part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. Over 122 million parts to choose from. My goodness, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. As you know, part of the set, I have a custom Air Force, Nike Air Force One, Alek, Manoah, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. shoes. Have I jinxed these guys this season? I mean, neither performing to their full capability. And really, I was just absolutely stunned when I did a deep dive because, of course, remember now, Vlad played so many games in non-major league ballparks, all of 2020, all the road games in 2020, home games in 2020, and a lot of the home games in 2021 were at Salem Field or Dunedin, so non-major league ballparks, right? So I want us to take a look at how he's done in actual major league ballparks because Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I'm a Laker fan, I was there with Kobe, the Blue Jay fan, Carlos Delgado. There's been a few massive players come up through, burst on the scene at the major league level or at the pro level that I was definitely excited about, but I always still wanted you to show it to me. I always still wanted to see it on the big level when the lights are the brightest. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is probably the only athlete that's never happened with me. Just watching him come up through the minors, I had him pegged as a first ballot Hall of Famer. For years, I've thought Vlad was special, was a superstar, was a first ballot Hall of Famer. I still think all of those things are on the table. Do not get me wrong on that. And only 24, right? But I still would say that, man, I'm a little underwhelmed with what we've seen from Vlad. Well, let's get into this here. And Vlad's fresh off a good game, right? Yesterday on Sunday, he had a multi-hit game with a home run. Now, see the thing that was his first home run versus a non-position player in a month. Remember, he had that grand slam off of Luke Raley, the Tampa Bay Rays right fielder during that 20-1 game. Well, are we going to count that really? It was back on May 4th. It was May 4th to June 4th. That's how long Vlad went. Like over 100 at-bats between home runs. My goodness. Now, some glass half full stuff here. Traditionally, Vlad is good in June. And again, he was good yesterday. June has started. He traditionally does start to heat up in June. He had 9 home runs last season in June. And that was by far his best home run month. He's 5 for 15 so far this June. And again, the good game yesterday. Now, what's really interesting for me is because I like the idea of Vlad getting DH days, and you know that those are his, days off, right? He'll sit down, he'll take a full day off kicking and screaming. So that's the give and take. That's the deal. That's your day off, Vlad, is you won't be out in the field at first base. You'll be a DH. Well, whatever Vlad's doing, I mean, maybe speak to his dad or some of his uncles that are well-versed with how to mentally be a DH, because he's not been a good DH. I know yesterday was a DH game. Right here I am praising his Sunday game, and it was a DH game. But overall, in the course of his career, Vlad 120 for 468 as a DH or pinch hitter. That's a 256 batting average. It's a 256 batting average. And by the way, again, 120 for 468. Well, we can make that 120 for 460 because the other 8, that's all as a pinch hitter. Vlad's 0 for 8 as a pinch hitter. Vlad's 0 for 8 as a pinch hitter. So whatever he is doing mentally to stay sharp, and ready during games when he's not out in the field has not worked over the course of his career. 256 batting average when he's not playing out in the field. 256 is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. This is someone I've got pegged as a first ballot Hall of Famer. 256? My goodness, nowhere close. Nowhere close. At first base in his career, he's hitting a titch under 300, and his OPS is a titch under 900. When he's involved in first base, he's the Slim Daddy Vlad we know and love. He's the one that he is who we thought he was in those scenarios. Now, glass half full for this season, Vlad has 9 road home runs. Only had 13 all of last season. 9 home runs already on the road this season. Glass half empty. 0 home runs this season at Rogers Center. Are you absolutely? We're into June. I know it's been a heavy road schedule for the Blue Jays early on, but still, we're into June. Vlad had 19 long balls last season at the Rogers Center. Remember, that was the old dimensions. Fences have been moved in. Vlad still with as many home runs as Rogers Center this season as you or I have, which is to say 0. Is he contributing with the bat? Is he still finding ways to do his thing offensively at the Rogers Center? No. 242 batting average this season at home, 304 on base percentage. I mean, are you absolutely kidding me? That's Raimel Tapia. This is unacceptable from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Let's go. 612 OPS at the Rogers Center so far this season. If we looked into it, I'll bet you that Tapia's OPS is even higher than that. Like, that's just incredible. None of these numbers are anywhere near acceptable. None of these numbers are anywhere close to Vladimir Guerrero Jr., what he should be producing for your Toronto Blue Jays. Even in the playoffs, like, we're still waiting for that big signature moment from Vlad, aren't we? Even in the playoffs, he's 2 for 15 for the Blue Jays, and they were both singles. Oh boy. Now, prior to 2 strikes, Vladdy, especially, really early in at-bats, has been awesome. But at 2 strikes, especially this season, my goodness, he has been willing to play the pitcher's little reindeer games. He's been expanding his zone big time with 2 strikes. In his entire career, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has been an absolute monster when he's ahead or even in the count. Now, in 2023, when he's been even in the count, same thing. He's been that monster. When he's been ahead, way less effective this season. Again, going back to what we're talking about with the 2 strikes, even when Vlad's been ahead in the count, he's inexplicably, batting coaches, I'm looking at you, Don Mattingly, I'm looking at you, but anyway, inexplicably, even when ahead in the count this season, Vlad's been willing to chase. He's been willing to expand strike zones. He's been willing to swing at pitchers' pitches. He's been willing to play the pitcher's little reindeer games. I do not get it. Now, one thing I will absolutely say in Vlad's favor, and it just goes to show, if he can shore these other things up that he should be much better at, then this is where the special player that we talk about comes into play. Because for a Toronto Blue Jay team struggling so badly with runners in scoring position, Vlad is hitting very well with runners in scoring position. In fact, he's always hit well with runners in scoring position, and he's always hit well with 2 outs in runners in scoring position. This season, he's been every bit as good, if not better, than he's ever been with runners in scoring position. And with 2 outs in runners in scoring position, Vlad Guerrero Jr. in 2023, despite his pedestrian numbers, pedestrian for him, right? Nowhere close to his. There's just so many players could see Vlad's numbers and be like, oh my God, it's a career year for me. Yes, this is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. we're talking about, right? We have massively higher expectations for this guy. So absolutely how good he's been with runners in scoring position in the past, and he's been incredible with runners in scoring position this season, in particular with 2 out. So if that could just continue and he could get some of that power and he could be more consistent at the plate, start having those signature moments as well. Now we're starting to talk Vlad. So we're talking earlier about Salem Field and Dunedin. So Vlad has played 70 home games at Salem Field and Dunedin. That's a big sample size. That's a big number. It's almost a full season in Major League Baseball. 91 for 261. That's a 349 batting average in those non-Major League ballparks with 26 home runs. In those non-Major League ballparks, Vlad with a home run every 10 at-bats. Are we starting to see? I mean, I can't go so far as to say he was padding stats. It was the same playing field for everybody there. Not everybody put up these numbers, but in actual Major League ballparks, I averaged it out in actual Major League ballparks over 600 at-bats. You get about 600 at-bats for a full season. So Vladimir Guerrero Jr., outside of Salem Field and Dunedin, only 24, I get it, but he's been on the Major League level for a few years now, for years now at this point. 275 batting average with 27 home runs over a 600 at-bat season outside of Salem, in ballparks outside of Salem Field. 275. Again, I'm going to say there's a lot of batters who'd be saying, oh my God, 275. Hey, dear mom, like, holy cow, what a massive season from 275 for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. That's about 40 points below where I think he should be. My gosh. And 27 home runs. My goodness. Vlad, just by showing up for the games on time, should be in the mid-30s for home runs, and he should be pushing something into the 40s for home runs. But my goodness, averaging 27 outside of these ballparks. Really, I mean, at the very least, panic mode? Of course not, because he is still only 24, and I still have huge faith in Vlad, especially when he's disciplined, only swinging at strikes, especially when he's the Vlad that we know and love. But while playing in MLB parks, we see that there's a lot of work to do to live up to his incredibly special potential, because I don't think that I'm wrong about how special Vladimir Guerrero Jr. can be, and if we're being honest here, should be. Coming up on the Locked On Blue Jays podcast, we'll deep dive tonight's pitching matchup, Alek Manoah versus Brandon Belak. Reminder, you can catch that game, of course, on SiriusXM. But first, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs from you and never take a moment to think about what you need from yourself. But when we spend all our time giving, it can leave us feeling stretched thin and burnt out. Therapy can give you the tools to find more balance in your life so you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself, and it isn't just for those who have experienced major trauma. If you are indeed thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire and you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonmlb today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonmlb. Alek Manoah on the mound for the Blue Jays tonight. Happy Alek Manoah Day to those of you who still do celebrate. It's a significantly smaller number of those of us who celebrate Alek Manoah Day than it's ever been in the past. I get it. Blue Jays have lost 8 of Manoah's last 9 starts. That's unbelievable. This is a franchise that won 29 of Manoah's first 40 starts. When the big fella took the mound, when the big Puma took the ball every 5th day for the Toronto Blue Jays, it was a W coming for the Toronto Blue Jays. Just since then, though, 29-11 to start his career. Blue Jays with just 10 wins in Alek Manoah's last 24 starts. I'm going to say that again because it's staggering. In his last 24 starts for the Toronto Blue Jays, the Blue Jays have been victorious just 10 times. His average start this season, Alek Manoah, is 4 2/3 innings, 3 runs on 6 hits, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts, 93 pitches. I mean, where to start? The 3 runs on 6 hits sounds great until you realize that's over 4 2/3 innings. So he's not even, remember, as a starting pitcher, you have to go at least 5 innings to qualify for the win. So he's not even averaging going long enough to qualify for a win if he does pitch well or if the offense does well. 3 runs on 6 hits in that time. The 3 walks in 4 2/3 innings, 3 walks and 4 strikeouts. So basically a walk to strikeout ratio of 1-to-1 from Alek Manoah. How? And 93 pitches. Doesn't even get through the 5th inning, averaging 93 pitches per start. Wow. Unrecognizable is the word to describe Alek Manoah, at least so far in 2023. In the past of the Houston Astros, Kyle Tucker and Alex Bregman have hit Manoah. They're combined 3 for 6 with a home run. Now the rest of the Astros combined just 1 for 15 with 6 strikeouts against Alek Manoah. So there's your glass half full, Toronto Blue Jay fans. It's easy to see the glass half empty side of that, right? That was 2021 and 2022 Alek Manoah, who was awesome. They're going to face on tonight, they're going to face 2023 Alek Manoah, who's been completely unrecognizable. And in particular, how about Alek Manoah at Rogers Center? 6.83 ERA at Rogers Center this season. Yeah, you heard that right. Barely under 7. In fact, he's improved it. It was at 7.5 for most of the season. Holy moly. Opponents hitting over 300 versus Alek Manoah at home. Does not compute. We talked about his average season start. Well, the average start this season for Alek Manoah at Rogers Center, again, 4 2/3 innings, not even averaging 5 innings, 4 runs on 6 hits, home run every time, plus 4 walks and 4 strikeouts. A 1-to-1 walk to strikeout ratio so far this season in front of the home crowd. We literally even heard Alek Manoah get booed a few starts back from the home crowd. Holy moly. His best home start in 2023 had to be that one against the Orioles, against Baltimore Orioles a few weeks back now. 5 2/3 innings, just 2 runs on 6 hits, a season low 1 walk, 5 strikeouts, and he ensued 8 ground balls. He was working at the bottom of the zone. He wasn't missing up. It was by far his best home start. Needs so much more of that. You have that start, plus he had that start at Kansas City where his stuff wasn't great, but I love the way he battled. And he had that start at New York where he stared down Garrett Cole. They had a great pitchers duo there. So 3 starts. Now, Manoah's had a dozen starts, right? So to only have 3 good ones, I mean, not Alek Manoah like at all. I'm just saying that the cupboard isn't completely bare, right? If Alek Manoah can harness some of the things that we have seen when he's been good this season, please. I mean, the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays, to state the obvious, need Alek Manoah turning things around. There was already going to very likely be a need for starting pitching at the trade deadline. And what assets do the Blue Jays have to make that trade happen anyway? But on top of that, what assets do the Blue Jays have if they also need to pick up a starter to replace Alek Manoah? So his turnaround in 2023 is pivotal. That's why I think the Blue Jays haven't sent him down to AAA or anything like that. They need the big Puma to figure it out on the big level and be a big contributor to the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays. The glass half full again for Manoah. I would say the 2-seamer's been pretty good. The two-seamer's been pretty good. It's almost been as effective and as it has been in the past. He's seemingly losing faith in his four-seamer, especially against lefties. My gosh! And his once unhittable slider is being rocked this season. Opponents are hitting over 300 versus Alek Manoah's slider this season. They hit 190 last season off this slider. And like 156, something like that, the year before. Like, just incredible. I used to joke that his slider shouldn't be allowed. You're supposed to be engaged in competition, and there is no competition, especially to righties when he throws that slider. It's an out every time, but because it had such sharp diving movement, it has just not been there this season. The already 4 home runs off the slider this season allowed by Alek Manoah. He allowed 4 all of last season against the slider. Already 4 as we start June. Already 4 as he gets his first start in June so far this season. My goodness. His effectiveness, his dominance versus righties, out the window in 2023. In last season, righties hit 159 with 5 home runs and a strikeout to walk ratio of 9-1. That's incredible. I mean, my God, you can see why he's third in all-star voting, right? Righties hitting 159, 5 home runs. For every 9 strikeouts, he walks one of them. Like, just complete domination. How about this season? Oh boy, how about this season? 159 last season, righties, 263 this season. 5 righties hit home runs this season. 4 have already hit them this season, and a 1.5 strikeout to walk ratio. For every 1.5 strikeouts he gets, he's walking a batter. Unbelievable. Last season, Alek Manoah walked 11 walked 11 righties last season. Last season, Alek Manoah walked 11 righties. He's already walked 14 this season. Holy absolute moly. Alek Manoah. My gosh, Pete Walker, you're on the clock. You've been on the clock. We need answers for this guy. We need the big Puma turned around quick. Part of what I think maybe they've been doing is try to improve all of it. The two-seamer's been working. Let's do whatever we need to do to focus on getting that slider back to being that slider, and then we'll worry about the four-seamer afterwards. And remember now, once Kikuchi got down to 1 pitch to worry about, he became more effective. We've seen Jose Barrios. Now that he's down to just 1 pitch to worry about, he's been awesome this season. So Manoah has so many pitches to worry about right now. Let's try to do it one at a time, and the glass half full is let's be happy that the two-seamer seems to have been decent anyway. Brandon Bielak on the mound for the Houston Astros, fellow righty, 52nd career appearance, just his 14th start of the season. The Astros, Bielak's good and has been good, but I'm sure they'd rather have Jose Urquidy or Luis Garcia. But again, remember we were talking earlier, the Astros have some, as hot as they've been, as good as they've been, they've got some injuries to their starting pitching. Now, Bielak, this will be his 4th road start of the season. Astros have lost all 3 of his previous road starts. Hey, come on, is that a trend? Keep that going. When Bielak is on, he's a ground ball machine, but I'll say this. When he misses his spots, he becomes a home run machine. He has a very good changeup. A very good changeup. His fastball, his sinker, and his slider have all had their moments of getting hit and have all had their moments of leaving the ballpark. In fact, in his 3 road starts, Bielak has yielded 5 home runs. Blue Jays coming off a multi-home run game yesterday on Sunday, so let's hope. And a team in desperate of some kickstarts for the home runs, right? Remember, the Blue Jays are on pace right now for the first time since 2014 of not hitting at least 200 home runs this season. Right now, they're not even close to a pace of 200 home runs, by the way. So hopefully things are about to get going for this Blue Jays offense. Again, have to be able to lay off that changeup. But when Bielak gets in trouble is when that fastball and in particular the sinker and the slider, when he leaves them elevated in the zone. When he's at the bottom of the zone, he's an absolute ground ball machine. You'll know if he's on tonight because you'll see a lot of Blue Jay ground balls. But if you're the Blue Jays, you don't have to wait for just the fastball. You can hit the sinker or the slider as well, but just be ready to pick that moment and use that opportunity when Bielak does get elevated in the strike zone. Pounce on that pitch. Brandon Belt, Matt Chapman, and Dalton Varsho, those are the only Blue Jays to ever face Bielak. It hasn't gone well. They're a combined 1 for 8 with 4 strikeouts. Now, there's 2 lefties in there, right? And Bielak's done well against lefties. Again, this is a game where I think the Blue Jays would have liked to have Santiago Espinal available to them. But, hey, man, on paper, this might look like advantage Astros, but come on, Alek Manoah. Come on, Alek Manoah. Am I going to predict? I mean, jeez, I just can't. It's at home. The only reason I can't downright predict a good performance from Manoah tonight is because it's at home and he's just struggled so mightily, and we know how darn good Houston is. Now, that'll wrap up Monday's Locked On Blue Jays. Enjoy tonight's game. Remember, you can take that in on SiriusXM and go get him, Alek Manoah. Now, keep it locked on the Locked On Podcast Network and check out Sully hosting Locked On MLB.